There comes a moment in life when you realize something quietly shocking. The world has not changed, people have not changed, problems still appear, noise still exists, yet inside you, something is different. The chaos no longer reaches you the way it used to. The words that once hurt you now pass through without leaving a wound. The situations that once stole your peace now arrive, stay briefly, and then leave without power. This is not because life became easier, but because you learned something essential. Buddhism teaches that peace is not created by controlling the world, but by understanding the mind that reacts to it. When this understanding becomes clear, nothing outside of you can disturb what is settled within. Today, these 7 powerful lessons will show you how to find peace in any situation, not by escaping life, but by standing calmly within it. 1. Peace begins when you stop arguing with reality. One of the deepest and most misunderstood causes of inner disturbance is resistance to what already exists. Most people believe they suffer because of events, people, or situations. But Buddhism teaches something far more subtle and powerful. We suffer because our mind refuses to accept reality as it is. When something unpleasant happens, the mind immediately begins to argue. It says this should not have happened, this is unfair, this is not how things were supposed to go. We replay the same moments again and again, wishing someone had behaved differently, wishing we had said something else, wishing life had followed our expectations instead of its own unpredictable flow. This mental replay does not change the past, but it deeply disturbs the present. Buddhism explains that reality moves according to causes and conditions. Everything that happens is the result of countless factors coming together, many of which are beyond our control. Reality does not consult our preferences before unfolding. It does not ask whether we are ready or comfortable. When we resist this truth, we create a silent inner battle. The event has already happened, but the mind continues to fight it, and this ongoing resistance becomes the real source of pain. Reality itself is neutral. It is our refusal to accept it that turns discomfort into suffering. The moment you stop arguing with what is already here, something profound begins to happen inside you. The body relaxes, the breath softens, and the mind loses its sharp edge. Acceptance is not weakness, and it does not mean you approve of what happened or give up your values. It simply means you stop exhausting yourself by fighting what cannot be undone. Acceptance is the wisdom to recognize the present moment exactly as it is, without adding extra layers of mental suffering on top of it. When you say, "This should not be happening," you tighten your mind and trap yourself in resistance. But when you gently shift to saying, "This is happening and I will face it with awareness," you reclaim your inner stability. You stop wasting energy on denial and begin using that energy to respond wisely. Peace grows not because life becomes perfect, but because your mind no longer struggles against reality. When resistance ends, clarity begins. And in that clarity, a deep, quiet peace naturally arises, even in the middle of difficulty. 2. You are disturbed, not by events, but by attachment to outcomes. One of the most important insights in Buddhism is the understanding that events themselves do not have the power to disturb us as much as our attachment to how things are supposed to turn out. Most inner suffering begins the moment we become emotionally tied to a specific result. We want people to behave in a certain way, situations to end a certain way, and life to follow a path we have already imagined in our mind. When reality moves in a different direction, the mind reacts with frustration, anger, sadness, or fear. It feels as if something has been taken away, even though nothing was ever guaranteed in the first place. Buddhism teaches that attachment is the root of this disturbance. Attachment does not only mean clinging to material things, it also means clinging to expectations, hopes, roles, identities, and outcomes. We attach our peace to success, relationships, approval, control, and certainty. When these attachments are threatened or removed, the mind panics because it believes happiness depends on them. The situation itself may be simple, but the emotional reaction becomes intense because the mind is holding tightly to how things should be. When you look closely, you will notice that two people can face the same situation and react completely differently. One remains calm, while the other feels disturbed. The difference is not the event, but the level of attachment. The person who is less attached is able to respond with clarity instead of emotional turmoil. Buddhism does not teach us to stop caring or to become indifferent. It teaches us to act fully while releasing the demand that life must reward us in a specific way. You can give your best effort, speak your truth, and walk your path sincerely while still letting go of the outcome. When attachment loosens, the heart becomes lighter. You stop feeling personally attacked by every setback. You stop measuring your worth by results you cannot fully control. Disappointment loses its power because you are no longer clinging to a fixed expectation. Peace begins to grow when you realize that outcomes are not yours to own. You are responsible for your actions, not for how the world responds to them. When this understanding settles into the mind, life becomes easier to carry. Events come and go, success and failure rise and fall, but your inner peace remains steady because it is no longer tied to conditions outside of you. 3. Inner silence is stronger than trying to control others. Many people spend their lives searching for peace by trying to control what is happening around them. They try to control how people think, how they behave, how they speak, and how situations unfold. They believe that if others were more understanding, more respectful, or more predictable, then peace would finally arrive. Buddhism teaches a very different truth. True peace does not come from controlling the outside world. It comes from mastering your inner responses. The more you try to control others, the more disturbed you become, because people do not exist to fulfill your expectations. Every person is shaped by their own experiences, habits, fears, and limitations. When they act in ways you dislike, your mind reacts by tightening, judging, and resisting. This reaction is what steals your peace, not the person themselves. Buddhism teaches that when you stop demanding that people behave a certain way, your mind becomes lighter and more free. Inner silence is the ability to remain aware without immediately reacting. It is not the absence of sound or activity, but the absence of inner conflict. When someone speaks harshly to you, inner silence allows you to hear the words without instantly identifying with them. When situations become tense, inner silence keeps you grounded in your breath instead of pulling you into emotional chaos. This silence gives you space between what happens and how you respond. In that space, wisdom appears. When you develop inner silence, you no longer feel the need to defend yourself constantly or prove your worth. You stop taking everything personally. You begin to see that many people are acting from their own pain and confusion, not from a desire to harm you. This understanding softens your heart and strengthens your mind at the same time. Peace grows when you realize that controlling others is exhausting, but mastering yourself is liberating. Once inner silence becomes strong, nothing outside of you can disturb what is calm within. 3. Inner silence is stronger than trying to control others. Many people believe that peace will come once their environment becomes calm, once people behave better, once situations unfold according to their wishes. Because of this belief, they spend a great amount of energy trying to control the world around them. They try to manage other people's opinions, emotions, and actions. They try to correct, explain, defend, and convince, hoping that if others understand them, life will finally feel peaceful. Buddhism teaches that this approach does the opposite. The more you try to control the outside world, the more restless and disturbed your inner world becomes. Every human being acts from their own conditioning. Each person carries their own history, habits, fears, wounds, and limitations. Expecting them to act exactly as you want is unrealistic and exhausting. When people disappoint you, speak harshly, or behave unfairly, the real disturbance does not come from their actions, but from your inner resistance to them. The mind says, "They should not be like this," and immediately tightens. This tightening creates emotional pain. Buddhism teaches that when you stop demanding that people change to protect your peace, your mind begins to relax. Inner silence is not about becoming passive or allowing injustice. It is about developing a deep awareness that is not shaken by external noise. Inner silence means you can hear words without absorbing their emotional charge. It means you can witness situations without immediately reacting from anger, fear, or pride. When something unpleasant happens, inner silence creates a pause. In that pause, you are no longer controlled by impulse. You choose your response instead of being dragged by reaction. This silence grows through awareness of the breath, the body, and the present moment. When emotions rise, you notice them without judgment. You observe the tightening in your chest, the heat of anger, or the pull of defensiveness. Instead of acting on these sensations, you allow them to exist and pass. This practice weakens the habit of reaction. Over time, what once triggered you strongly begins to lose its power. Not because people have changed, but because your relationship with your own mind has changed. When inner silence becomes strong, you no longer need to control others to feel safe. You stop seeking constant validation or understanding. You realize that peace does not depend on being agreed with, respected, or praised. It depends on your ability to remain present and grounded within yourself. This creates a quiet strength. You can walk away from unnecessary conflict. You can speak calmly when needed. You can remain silent when words would only create more disturbance. Buddhism teaches that the strongest person is not the one who dominates others, but the one who understands themselves. When inner silence is cultivated, you begin to see that most conflicts arise from unconscious reactions. By remaining aware, you break this cycle. You no longer add fuel to emotional fires. Your presence alone becomes calming, not because you control others, but because you are no longer controlled by them. This is why inner silence is stronger than any attempt to control the world. Once it is established, nothing outside can disturb the peace that lives within you. 4. The mind creates storms, awareness dissolves them. Most of the disturbance we experience in life does not come from what is happening in front of us, but from what is happening inside our own mind. Buddhism teaches that the mind is constantly creating stories. It takes small events and turns them into big problems. It takes uncertain moments and turns them into fear. It takes memories from the past and imagined futures and blends them together until the present moment feels heavy and overwhelming. The mind moves endlessly, jumping from thought to thought, often without awareness. When we are not conscious of this process, we become trapped inside these mental storms. A single thought can trigger a chain reaction. One memory leads to another, one fear invites the next, and soon the mind is filled with tension, worry, or anger. The body responds as if the danger is real, even when nothing harmful is happening in the present moment. Buddhism teaches that this is how suffering is created. It is not the thought itself that causes suffering, but our unconscious identification with it. We believe the thought, follow it, and allow it to shape our emotions. Awareness is the key that dissolves these storms. When you become aware of your thoughts, instead of being carried by them, a shift occurs. You begin to see that thoughts are temporary events, not facts and not commands. They arise, change, and disappear on their own. When you observe a thought without judging it or pushing it away, it loses its power. Fear weakens when it is seen clearly. Anger softens when it is noticed without reaction. Awareness creates distance between you and the storm. Buddhism encourages the practice of mindfulness, which means gently bringing attention back to the present moment. This can be done through awareness of the breath, sensations in the body, or sounds around you. When the mind begins to race, you do not fight it. Fighting the mind only creates more tension. Instead, you watch it with patience, like watching waves rise and fall in the ocean. The waves may still appear, but they no longer pull you under. As awareness grows, the mind naturally becomes quieter. Not because thoughts stop completely, but because you stop feeding them with fear and resistance. You realize that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that observes them. This understanding brings great peace. The storms may still pass through the mind, but they no longer define you. They come and go, while you remain steady. When awareness replaces unconscious thinking, clarity replaces confusion. You respond instead of react. You act from understanding instead of impulse. Life becomes lighter, not because problems disappear, but because the mind no longer turns every moment into a battle. This is why Buddhism teaches that awareness is freedom. Once you see the mind clearly, its storms lose their power, and peace naturally takes their place. 5. Let go of the self that constantly needs protection. A great deal of inner disturbance comes from the constant effort to protect an idea of who we think we are. We carry an invisible image of ourselves in the mind, an identity shaped by our past experiences, achievements, failures, and the opinions of others. This identity wants to be respected, understood, admired, and treated fairly at all times. When something threatens this image, the mind reacts strongly. A simple comment can feel like an attack. A disagreement can feel like rejection. A lack of appreciation can feel like disrespect. Buddhism teaches that this fragile sense of self is one of the main sources of suffering. The mind believes that it must defend this identity to survive. It constantly compares, judges, and reacts. It seeks approval and fears criticism. When someone challenges your ideas, ignores your efforts, or speaks negatively about you, the mind tightens and prepares for defense. This is when anger arises, when resentment builds, and when peace disappears. But Buddhism invites us to look more deeply. It asks us to question whether this self we are protecting is truly solid and permanent. According to Buddhist teaching, the self is not a fixed entity. It is a collection of thoughts, memories, habits, and emotions that are always changing. The person you were 5 years ago is not the same person you are today. Your beliefs, feelings, and understanding are constantly shifting. When you see this clearly, the urge to defend a rigid identity begins to weaken. You realize that not every comment requires a response, and not every situation is a personal attack. Letting go of the self does not mean becoming weak or losing your voice. It means releasing the need to take everything personally. It means allowing others to have their opinions without feeling threatened by them. When someone speaks harshly, you begin to see their words as an expression of their own inner state rather than a reflection of your worth. This understanding creates space. In that space, emotional reactions lose their intensity. As attachment to identity softens, peace grows naturally. You no longer feel the need to constantly prove yourself. You stop exhausting your energy trying to be seen in a certain way. You become more flexible, more open, and more at ease. When praise comes, you receive it without clinging. When criticism comes, you observe it without collapsing. This balance is deeply liberating. Buddhism teaches that freedom begins when you stop carrying the heavy burden of self-defense. When you loosen your grip on the image of who you think you must be, You experience a quiet confidence that does not depend on validation. Nothing disturbs you as easily because there is no fragile self left to protect. In its place, there is awareness, presence, and a deep inner peace that remains steady no matter what arises. 6. Everything that disturbs you is temporary, nothing lasts forever. One of the most powerful truths taught in Buddhism is the understanding of impermanence. This single insight, when deeply understood, has the power to dissolve a huge amount of inner suffering. Most of our disturbance comes from the false belief that what we are experiencing now will last forever. When pain arises, the mind whispers, "This will never end." When fear appears, it says, "I will always feel like this." When a difficult situation enters our life, the mind imagines a future permanently shaped by this moment. Buddhism teaches that this belief is an illusion, and it is this illusion that magnifies suffering. Everything in life is constantly changing. Emotions rise and fall, situations shift, people change. Even the body is different from one moment to the next. Nothing remains fixed, yet the mind clings as if things are permanent. When something disturbs you, the mind tightens because it wants certainty and stability. It wants to know when the pain will end, how the situation will resolve, and whether things will return to how they were before. When answers are not available, anxiety grows. Buddhism teaches that peace is found not by controlling change, but by understanding and accepting it. When you truly reflect on impermanence, you begin to see that every disturbing experience has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Even intense emotions cannot sustain themselves forever. Anger eventually softens, sadness eventually fades, fear eventually loosens its grip. This does not mean the experience is easy, but it means it is not eternal. When you remember this during difficult moments, the mind relaxes slightly. You stop fighting the experience and instead allow it to move through you. Impermanence also teaches balance during pleasant moments. When life feels good, Buddhism encourages gratitude without attachment. If you cling too tightly to happiness, you create fear of losing it. That fear becomes a new form of disturbance. By remembering that even joyful moments are temporary, you learn to appreciate them fully without trying to hold on to them. This creates emotional maturity. You enjoy what is present while remaining peaceful when it changes. Many people suffer because they identify completely with what they are feeling. They say, "I am broken, I am anxious, I am unhappy." Buddhism gently corrects this by teaching that emotions are experiences, not identities. You are not the emotion, you are the awareness experiencing it. Just as clouds pass through the sky, emotions pass through the mind. When you stop labeling yourself by temporary states, they lose their power to define you. This understanding becomes especially important during pain and loss. When something ends or someone leaves, the mind resists the change and clings to the past. Buddhism teaches that clinging to what has already changed creates unnecessary suffering. Acceptance of impermanence allows grief to exist without turning into despair. You honor what was while allowing life to continue unfolding. When impermanence is deeply understood, fear begins to fade. You stop panicking when things go wrong because you know this moment is not permanent. You stop becoming arrogant when things go right because you know this moment will also change. You develop emotional steadiness. Life becomes easier to navigate because you are no longer shocked by change. Peace grows when you trust the natural rhythm of impermanence. You stop demanding that life remain fixed. You stop fighting change. You allow experiences to come and go without clinging or resistance. When this wisdom settles into your heart, disturbances lose their intensity. They are seen as temporary visitors rather than permanent enemies. And in that understanding, a deep, quiet peace begins to take root, one that remains steady even as life continues to change. 7. Peace is found by returning again and again to the present moment. Buddhism teaches that the present moment is the only place where peace truly exists, not in the past, not in the future, but here and now. Yet most people spend very little time actually living in the present. The mind is almost always traveling. It revisits past mistakes, regrets, losses, and conversations that are already over. Or it rushes ahead into imagined futures filled with worry, fear, expectations, and uncertainty. While the body remains here, the mind is elsewhere. This constant movement of the mind is one of the greatest sources of inner disturbance. When the mind lives in the past, peace is replaced by guilt, sadness, or resentment. When the mind lives in the future, peace is replaced by anxiety and fear. Buddhism explains that suffering increases when attention leaves the present moment, because the present is the only place where life is actually happening. The past exists only as memory. The future exists only as thought. Both are mental constructions, yet we allow them to dominate our emotional state, stealing peace from the only moment we truly have. Returning to the present moment is not an escape from life. It is a return to reality. When you gently bring your attention back to your breath, your body, and your immediate experience, the mind begins to settle. You notice the feeling of air entering and leaving your lungs. You notice the weight of your body where it touches the ground or the chair. You notice sounds without labeling them as pleasant or unpleasant. This simple awareness anchors you in now. And in this anchoring, disturbance begins to dissolve. Buddhism teaches that the present moment is always workable. No matter how difficult life feels, in this exact moment you are breathing. In this exact moment, you are alive. In this exact moment, there is space to respond wisely instead of reacting blindly. When the mind stays present, problems shrink to their actual size. You stop adding imagined suffering on top of real challenges. You deal with what is directly in front of you, not with everything that might happen later. Many people believe they will find peace once their problems are solved. Buddhism gently reverses this idea. Peace is not the result of a problem-free life. It is the result of a present mind. Even in the middle of difficulty, awareness of the present moment creates calm. Pain may still exist, but unnecessary suffering fades. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "How can I meet this moment with clarity?" This shift changes everything. Returning to the present moment is a practice, not a one-time achievement. The mind will wander again and again. Buddhism does not judge this. Each time you notice the mind drifting, that noticing itself is awareness. Gently bringing attention back, without frustration or self-criticism, strengthens inner peace. Over time, this practice becomes natural. You begin to live more fully in each moment, instead of being trapped in mental noise. When presence deepens, you begin to experience life directly rather than through constant commentary. You listen more deeply. You move more consciously. You speak with intention. Even ordinary moments begin to feel rich and meaningful. Peace is no longer something you chase. It is something you recognize. It was always here, waiting beneath the noise of the mind. Buddhism teaches that nothing outside you needs to change for this peace to be available. The world can remain uncertain. People can remain imperfect. Life can remain unpredictable. Yet when you return to the present moment, again and again, you discover a quiet refuge within yourself. A place untouched by past regrets and future fears. And once this refuge is known, nothing can truly disturb you, because you are no longer living anywhere else but here. 8. True peace comes when you stop searching for it outside yourself. One of the most subtle reasons people remain disturbed is because they are constantly searching for peace somewhere outside themselves. They believe peace will arrive when life becomes easier, when problems disappear, when relationships improve, when money increases, or when people finally understand them. Buddhism teaches that this endless search itself is a form of restlessness. As long as peace is seen as something external, it will always feel distant and fragile because anything outside of you can be lost, changed, or taken away. From a Buddhist perspective, peace is not something you gain, it is something you uncover. It already exists beneath the layers of craving, fear, expectation, and attachment. When you are constantly looking outward for fulfillment, the mind remains unsettled. It moves from desire to desire, hoping the next situation will finally bring calm. But even when things improve temporarily, the mind quickly finds something new to worry about or desire. This cycle keeps peace out of reach. Buddhism teaches that the habit of seeking is deeply rooted in the belief that something is missing within you. The mind tells you that once you achieve more, become better, or fix everything, then you will be at peace. This belief creates endless pressure. You are never allowed to fully rest in who you are or where you are. Peace becomes conditional, dependent on circumstances that are always changing. As a result, even moments of happiness are mixed with fear of loss. When you stop searching for peace outside yourself, a powerful shift occurs. You begin to turn inward, not in a selfish way, but in an aware and grounded way. You start observing your thoughts, emotions, and reactions without trying to escape them. You realize that discomfort does not mean something is wrong, it simply means something is being felt. When you allow experiences to exist without immediately trying to fix or avoid them, the mind becomes calmer. This inner turning does not mean withdrawing from life. You still participate fully. You still work, love, and face challenges, but you stop placing your inner stability in the hands of external conditions. You understand that peace is your responsibility, not the world's obligation. This realization is deeply empowering. You stop blaming situations or people for how you feel. Instead, you begin to take gentle ownership of your inner state. Buddhism teaches that when you stop chasing peace, it naturally arises. The mind becomes quieter because it is no longer constantly reaching outward. You begin to notice moments of stillness that were always present but previously ignored. Simple things like breathing, walking, or sitting become grounding. You discover that peace does not require special circumstances. It exists in ordinary moments when the mind is no longer restless. As this understanding deepens, life feels less threatening. Challenges still appear, but they no longer shake your foundation. You respond instead of react. You move through difficulties with patience rather than panic. Even uncertainty becomes easier to hold because you are no longer searching for guarantees. You trust your ability to remain present and aware, no matter what arises. True peace, according to Buddhism, is not excitement, pleasure, or constant happiness. It is a quiet steadiness that remains even when life is imperfect. It is the absence of inner conflict. It is the feeling of being at home within yourself. When you stop looking for peace outside and begin recognizing it within, nothing can truly disturb you. The world may continue to change, but your inner ground remains firm, and from that place you are finally free. 9. When you stop identifying with thoughts and emotions, nothing can control you. One of the deepest reasons people feel disturbed is because they believe they are their thoughts and emotions. When anger arises, they say, "I am angry." When fear appears, they say, "I am afraid." When sadness comes, they say, "I am broken." Buddhism teaches that this identification is one of the greatest illusions of the mind. Thoughts and emotions are experiences that arise within awareness, but they are not who you are. The moment you mistake them for your identity, they gain power over you. The mind produces thoughts continuously, just like the heart beats continuously. Some thoughts are useful, some are neutral, and many are negative or fearful. The problem is not that these thoughts appear. The problem begins when you believe every thought and follow it without awareness. A single negative thought can quickly turn into a story. That story creates emotion. That emotion influences behavior. Soon, your entire inner world is being controlled by something that appeared for just a moment in the mind. Buddhism teaches that thoughts are conditioned. They arise due to past experiences, habits, memories, and external influences. Many of your thoughts are not chosen consciously, they simply appear. When you understand this, you stop taking them so personally. You begin to see that a thought is just a thought, not a command and not a truth. The same applies to emotions. Emotions arise due to causes and conditions, then fade away. They are temporary movements within you, not permanent states of being. When you begin to observe thoughts and emotions instead of identifying with them, a powerful shift occurs. You create space between awareness and experience. In this space, you are no longer trapped inside the emotion. Anger may arise, but there is also awareness watching anger. Fear may appear, but there is awareness noticing fear. This awareness is calm, stable, and untouched by what it observes. Buddhism teaches that this awareness is your true refuge. This does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending they are not there. Suppression creates more tension. Buddhism encourages full awareness without attachment. You allow emotions to exist without feeding them with stories. You feel them in the body without labeling them as me or mine. When emotions are allowed without resistance or identification, they naturally pass. What once controlled you begins to lose its grip. Most people react automatically because they believe they have no choice. A situation happens, a thought arises, an emotion follows, and the reaction feels inevitable. Buddhism reveals that this is not true. Between stimulus and response, there is awareness. When awareness is present, choice becomes possible. You may still feel anger, but you no longer have to act from it. You may still feel fear, but you no longer have to let it decide your actions. This is real freedom. Over time, this practice changes your relationship with your inner world. You stop being afraid of your thoughts. You stop running from uncomfortable emotions. You develop trust in your ability to remain present no matter what arises. This trust creates deep inner stability. External situations lose their power because they can only trigger thoughts and emotions, and you no longer mistake those for your identity. Buddhism teaches that suffering continues as long as we cling to mental states as self. When that clinging loosens, peace appears naturally. You realize that nothing outside of you has direct power over your inner state. People can speak, situations can change, life can become unpredictable. But none of these things can disturb you unless you identify with the thoughts and emotions they trigger. As this understanding deepens, you experience a profound sense of freedom. You no longer feel like a victim of your mind. You become a witness, calm and steady, watching life unfold. Thoughts still come and go, emotions still rise and fall, but they no longer control you. They pass through awareness like waves through the ocean, while you remain grounded and present beneath the surface. This is why Buddhism teaches that liberation does not come from changing the world, but from understanding the mind. When you stop identifying with thoughts and emotions, nothing can truly disturb you. You are no longer at the mercy of every inner movement. You live from awareness, not reaction, and from that place, peace is no longer fragile. It becomes unshakable. 10. When you trust life instead of fighting it, peace becomes unshakable. One of the final and deepest shifts on the path to inner peace is learning to trust life instead of constantly fighting against it. Most inner disturbance comes from the belief that life is against us, that something has gone wrong, or that we must stay tense and alert at all times to protect ourselves. The mind lives in defense mode, always expecting disappointment, loss, or failure. Buddhism teaches that this constant inner resistance creates exhaustion. When you stop trusting life, you stop trusting the present moment, and peace disappears. Trusting life does not mean believing that everything will always go your way, or that difficulties will never arise. Buddhism is realistic and honest. It acknowledges suffering, change, loss, and uncertainty as natural parts of existence. Trust means understanding that whatever arises is part of a larger flow of causes and conditions, even when you cannot immediately understand it. It means accepting that life does not owe you comfort, yet it always offers lessons, growth, and clarity when met with awareness. When you fight life, the mind asks endless questions filled with resistance. Why me? Why now? Why did this happen? These questions are not asked from curiosity, but from rejection of reality. They tighten the mind and keep you trapped in frustration. Trust shifts these questions. Instead of fighting what is happening, you begin to ask, how can I meet this moment wisely? This change alone softens suffering. The situation may remain difficult, but your relationship with it becomes peaceful. Buddhism teaches that life unfolds according to impermanence and interdependence. Nothing happens in isolation. Every moment is the result of countless unseen factors. When you trust this truth, you stop blaming yourself excessively and stop blaming the world. You realize that not everything is personal and not everything is within your control. This realization brings humility and relief. You stop carrying the impossible burden of managing life perfectly. Trusting life also means trusting yourself. It means trusting your ability to face whatever arises with awareness and patience. When you stop believing that you are fragile and incapable, fear loses its grip. You no longer panic at uncertainty because you know you can remain present within it. Buddhism teaches that strength is not the absence of difficulty, but the ability to stay awake and grounded while difficulty passes through. Many people delay peace, believing it will arrive once life becomes stable. Buddhism teaches that stability is found inside, not outside. Life will always change, plans will shift. People will come and go, bodies will age. When you trust life, you stop demanding guarantees that cannot exist. You stop waiting for the perfect moment to be at peace. You allow peace to exist alongside uncertainty. This trust transforms how you experience challenges. Instead of seeing obstacles as threats, you begin to see them as teachers. Pain becomes information rather than punishment. Loss becomes a reminder of impermanence rather than a collapse of meaning. Even confusion becomes part of the journey instead of a failure. This perspective does not remove emotion, but it removes despair. You feel deeply without being destroyed by what you feel. As trust deepens, resistance fades. You stop tightening against every change. You move with life instead of against it. This does not make you passive, it makes you responsive. You take action when needed, rest when needed, speak when needed, and remain silent when needed. Your actions come from clarity rather than fear. This alignment creates a deep sense of ease. Buddhism teaches that peace becomes unshakable when you stop demanding that life meet your expectations and begin meeting life as it is. When you trust the flow of existence, even uncertainty feels lighter. Even pain feels workable. Even silence feels full. You no longer feel at war with the world or with yourself. When this understanding settles into the heart, peace stops being something you chase. It becomes the natural state you return to again and again. Life continues to rise and fall, but you remain centered. Nothing needs to be perfect for you to be at peace. You trust the moment, you trust awareness, and you trust your ability to remain present no matter what comes. And once this trust is established, nothing can truly disturb you, because you are no longer fighting life. You are living it. True peace is not the absence of problems, noise, or difficulty. It is the absence of inner resistance. Buddhism teaches that the world will always change, people will always act according to their nature, and life will never follow a perfect plan. When you stop demanding that reality be different, when you loosen attachment to outcomes, when you develop inner silence, awareness, and trust, something profound happens inside you. You stop being shaken by every external movement. Peace grows when you understand that thoughts are not commands, emotions are not identities, and situations are not permanent. You learn to observe instead of react, to accept instead of resist, and to remain present instead of escaping into the past or future. This understanding does not make you cold or detached from life. It makes you deeply grounded within it. You feel fully, but you are no longer controlled by what you feel. Nothing outside of you has the power to disturb your inner state unless you give it that power. When awareness becomes your home, life's challenges lose their ability to overwhelm you. You meet joy without clinging and pain without collapsing. You trust life instead of fighting it. You return to the present moment again and again, where peace has always been waiting. This is not a technique to master once, but a way of living. Each moment offers a new opportunity to choose awareness over reaction, acceptance over resistance, and presence over fear. And as this choice becomes natural, peace stops being fragile. It becomes steady, quiet, and unshakable. When you truly learn this, nothing can disturb you. Not because the world becomes gentle, but because your mind becomes free.